Hey everyone, welcome to Talking Tokens, a podcast focused on interviewing the best crypto founders, market players, and up-and-coming startups that are changing the industry every single Tuesday and Thursday. I'm Jacqueline Melinek, your award-nominated host and former senior crypto reporter turned entrepreneur, and I'm excited to be here with you all. Now, let's get into it. Hello, good afternoon or good morning or good night, wherever any of you are. Hi, John, how are you?
Great. And it's true. The community, Ava Labs and Avalanche community is all over the world. So yes, and they're all in different time zones. So good afternoon, good morning, and good evening.
Exactly. Welcome to the Avalanche quarterly webinar with, of course, Ava Labs President John Wu. In this discussion, we'll have a back and forth conversation, but we'll also open up the floor to Q&A at the end for the community. So if you have questions, post them in the chat or save them at the end and we'll try to get to you. With that said, we'll start with some background and context. Obviously, the current bull market is rubbing off positively on Avalanche as the network surpassed $1 billion in TVL this quarter for the first time since November 2022. Avalanche has also seen substantial growth in sectors like Web3 gaming, tokenization, loyalty programs, and NFTs this quarter. Its partnership with Coachella and OpenSea brought in over 55,000 quests at the music festival, and other initiatives like a real-world asset platform debuted this quarter with its tokenized reinsurance fund on Avalanche, which we'll dive into shortly. To start things off, John actually spoke at the SALT conference earlier this month about the crypto space post-spot Bitcoin ETF and highlighted some interesting conversations around tokenization. I want to hone in on that. John, given your traditional finance background and involvement in the tokenization world, what would you say is the state of tokenization today?
Tokenization today has actually grown far more than people realize. And it's happening right now. I mean, we all know that stable coins is one area that's had product market proof. That is a form of tokenization. And it's not just the old USDC, USDT on-chain, no yield type of stable coin. There's new players, enterprise players using stable coins to make their worlds efficient. Obviously, PayPal is trying to work on that. We at Ava Labs worked with ANZ to create dollarized Asian currencies. Tokenized Asian currencies for stable coins as well. So I think there's about like a market cap of close to 160 billion of stable coins right now. But to put that in perspective, that's still less than 1% of the money supply of the US. So it is happening and it's got a long runway. So that's the state of tokenization. To answer your question, it is happening. Besides stable coins, there's also funds, commodities, with the real world assets all continuing to grow.
So what do institutions want this year compared to previous ones, especially now that we have the spot Bitcoin ETF, the spot Ether ETF, and then there's funds coming into the tokenization world? What are they looking at now?
Perfect example to talk to is someone at Ava Labs. I mean, we've been talking to these institutions for years. So 2 years ago, they wanted to be educated on the benefits of doing things on a blockchain. What does the blockchain technology help and how does it help? And what are the benefits? I think now, fast forward 2 years, today, what they're doing is actually deploying things and building things. They want to get into the technology with Ava Labs. They want to really, a lot of them are proof of concepts, to be clear, but they want to be ready so that they have the technology going, understand the technology, and what regulatory requirements and what other things they can do to embed into the technology so they can hit the ground running when there's less uncertainty in the regulatory environment. So to summarize, 2 or 3 years ago, they wanted education. Today, they're actually building.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to kind of the terms that we use in this space, how do you compare real world assets and tokenization? Are they one and the same, different? How do you explain that to these industries or
they're
institutions?
Different.
Right.
Yep. They're different. Tokenization is almost like something you can do on many, many things, not just in terms of existing assets. Real world assets is often referred to taking the right of ownership that exists right now, either in paper, an Excel spreadsheet, or a single server somewhere, and transferring that right of ownership on chain, making it more transparent, secure, and creating efficiencies for the user as well as for the issuer. So they're kind of different. One requires the other. Real world assets requires tokenization of existing assets, but they're slightly different.
Okay. And then how does Avalanche's blockchain technology kind of improve those sectors today? Like, what do you say to institutions when they're like, why should we work with you?
Well, I mean, I think this community knows there's many reasons why the Avalanche consensus start there. It's instant finality. So when you talk about traditional financial institutions, they want to move a lot of money around. The fact that you can settle things instantly is huge. In fact, it's taken a long time. Just recently, the stock market has gone from 2-day to 1-day settlement, literally just this week, I think. So lowering the settlement or having instant finality is huge. But I think what they're really excited about in terms of for Ava Labs helping them deploy on Avalanche is the fact that Avalanche architecture is set up so they can create more customization for what they need. So these subnets, we call them, which should be a better name, but it's a self-sovereign blockchain. And they can create, you can embed the compliance regulations that you need, whether it's KYC AML or accreditation, because a lot of these assets are private that they want to tokenize and it can't just be sold to anyone. So the fact that they can get customized solutions for them and have a team at Ava Labs to help them integrate it into a blockchain, that's what they're asking for.
And are they actually building subnets today?
Yes, it's in testnet, it's in proof of concepts, but it is happening. And there are actually a few that are going live.
And what are they building specifically? Can you kind of go into the details or vaguely?
So stuff like I can talk about the categories, some of the names I can't talk about, but we've worked in the past and currently with all the major players on Wall Street, JP Morgan, Citi, Apollo, KKR. They're all doing it for different reasons. Citi, they're creating efficiencies in the foreign exchange market. Apollo and KKR, they're creating tokenized funds to give access to accredited investors as opposed to just institutions to their funds. The JP Morgans of the world and the ANZs, Australia New Zealand Bank, they're trying to create tokenized fiat currency, basically. JP Morgan is trying to create efficiency. And they have their own Onyx, but they also want to see how does it work in an open, non-private blockchain, permissionless blockchain, and where their assets. This is our partnership: JP Morgan, Apollo, Layer Zero. Who else was in there? Monetary Singapore in their safe sandbox. We were able to show and figure for their provenance thing. We could show that their HELOCs can be moved, bridged over from one chain to the permissionless world, and it can be traded easily when the world's ready for it.
Right. And these institutions and companies, some of them have global presences, some of them are US based. Given that situation of like globalization, but also the US regulatory environment, as it pertains to that, are you concerned about the situations in the US, working with institutions? How do you kind of navigate the landscape today?
That's a great question because the rules are different everywhere you go. Accreditation is a perfect example. The rules for what an accredited investor are in the US is different from other regions. So again, that speaks to the architecture and the potential of Avalanche technology. It allows you to spin up your own self-sovereign blockchain, and you can contain that blockchain and embed rules into it based on the rules that exist at your own region, so to speak. That is great, but at the same time, one of the benefits, as we all know, as deep crypto passionate people, is making things more global. So the fact that there are different rules in different areas does make it harder. But the good news is you can actually create ways where only similar rules that exist between different regions get to transact or do things together and block out other regions. And that's possible with Avalanche.
100%. And then looking at the RWA platform earlier this month, it announced its tokenization reinsurance fund on Avalanche. And aims to back $200 million in insurance premiums by the end of the year, with another $3 billion in the pipeline. Obviously, those are big numbers, and one can infer why this is such an important moment. But I've got to ask you, John, one, why does it matter? And two, what is Avalanche's place in the RWA sector?
It matters because so many people in Web 2 and Web 3 have been trying to make the insurance industry better, more efficient, and create more access. I mean, insurance industry is gigantic. You have catastrophic and non-catastrophic. Within each one, they have different types of things. And there have been other Web 2 oriented companies like Lemonade selling, effectively brokering insurance more to individuals directly. And we actually have Ava Labs as a partnership with Lemonade trying to create a product or a service for them as well. But no one's been able to really make a huge dent, especially on the back end of the insurance, the reinsurance market. So these pros when I say pros, they are old school insurance people. They understand that market. They're domain experts. They've been working on these solutions and they came to the conclusion, two things. One, it can be done better in a blockchain enabled solution. And two, Ava Labs helping them on Avalanche is the best way to do it. So it's important for us because they thought that we had the right tools and to help them. And it's important for the industry because this is a giant industry. The way it normally works is, Jackie, you need, I don't know, some sort of insurance for your car or something. And there are 15 other Jackies, from Jackie to Joe Smith. All of you go to AIG and get insurance. Mm-hmm. That insurance gets packaged or put together, an index or something, and AIG sells either 90% or 100% of it because they underwrite the actual issuance of it, but they don't necessarily want to underwrite the risk of Jackie and everyone else always paying the premiums for it. So they package it up, they sell it to a reinsurance market out there, and typically those reinsurance people or funds are experts in understanding how to analyze the risk of these different types of insurance and different packages. So, but that reinsurance market is actually very, very lucrative. What with a firm called Nexus Mutual and Ava Labs and Vista are doing is it's jumpstarting that with a technology solution as well as with actual dollars to help create the demand side so that when these things get repackaged and sold to the reinsurance market, there is a marketplace for it. And then ultimately the goal is giving people more access so that everyone can say, hey, I want those 15, 20% yields. And they will have the transparency on the blockchain to assess the risk. Because even funds right now who go in the reinsurance market to take on some of these deals, they see the returns potential, but they don't really understand the underlying collateral that supports it. Putting it on a blockchain makes it transparent so they can do better analysis. And hopefully that will mean a more liquid market.
Right. So, okay, we have insurance, reinsurance. I know in the past you guys announced the one with Securitize and KKR. So there's a bunch of different areas here that you could see tokenization, real world assets, et cetera. Where do you kind of see it going in the future? And what is the timeline for us to really get exactly what you just talked about, where normal people could get these yields or kind of be involved in it?
If I can tell you the exact timeline, I would be lying, and no one knows the exact timeline, right. But I can tell you what the build-up is. Again,
okay, yeah.
They're getting the rails in place. They're getting everything. Securitize is a great part of it. They have the licenses. They actually do technically they do a lot of this stuff. Ava Labs is just it's effectively a technology service business where they create, and software company, they create things on the Avalanche blockchain, just the technology providers. Securitize has the right licenses, has the Rolodex of the accredited or qualified investors to actually purchase some of this stuff. So what's happening right now is everyone is putting the pieces together. Now, when it happens, I wish it could be evolutionary, so it's easier to predict, but really it's going to be one day, some sort of clarity on regulation, and the socialization of it happens and makes it appealing for people to actually go purchase these alternative assets. And the hope is it just explodes.
Like an avalanche.
Right? Yes.
Before we wrap up this section on RWAs and tokenization, what other developments are you watching in that sector today that you think is significant for Ava Labs and also the whole ecosystem?
So in RWA specifically, we are actually talking to a lot of very high profile TradFi type players overseas, because like we were saying earlier, some of the rules are clearer overseas and the socialization of it is actually happening faster overseas. So Stay tuned. I can't name names, but there are definitely things happening in a very compliant way, contained to the regions of that they're in. So, we're New York based. We're Americans. We love to help Wall Street. But if some other street wants to do it faster, that could be a great example for Wall Street. So that's what we're watching in terms of real world assets and institutions.
We'll keep an eye out for that. Looking at the Web3 gaming space, there's also been substantial developments on that front on Avalanche. From the gaming conference in San Francisco, you guys had the whole Web3 gaming sucks stand, to games launching on Avalanche, even as recently as last week, 2 weeks ago. And you also noted on X that you've been a big fan of gaming and that Avalanche wants to be the most exciting platform in Web3 for it. Similar to the RWA and tokenization topics, looking at Web3 gaming, what do you think is the state of it today and how does it compare to previous years?
So there's so much in that question. I don't even know where to begin.
I gotta shoot 50 things at once, right?
But I think where you left off is easier to answer backwards. Where is state of Web3 today versus previous years? Let's just recant. Previous years, frankly, a lot of games that were launching in the whole blockchain crypto ecosystem, they were thinly veiled DeFi type products. The gameplay itself wasn't probably great, but it was probably a lot of fun for other reasons. But it was not exactly your classic game, if you will. What is exciting about what's happening now is the quality of the game producers, the developers, and people with track record of producing AAA games in Web 2 are trying to deploy on Web 3, and especially with Ava Labs' help on Avalanche. That's what's exciting. And, like you mentioned, there are games already deploying. Some big launches are going to happen in the fourth quarter, or maybe even third quarter, and definitely in the first quarter. So what's exciting is you have high quality games, and we're talking about companies that have raised $100+ million to create a game. And these are, call it, creators that have had track records of having hundreds of millions of people playing in their previous games and having creative franchises that are billion-dollar franchises, all creating solutions now with Ava Labs' help on Avalanche. So I think I can't wait for that. The negative, though, is to create these unbelievable games, it takes a long time. I mean, right. I think everyone, even in this audience who's not a game player, knows Grand Theft Auto. How many years has the next Grand Theft Auto been just delayed and delayed and delayed? In fact, I think the last Grand Theft Auto that came out for Take-Two is like literally 10 years ago now, and yet that game is still going strong. So to develop great games takes a long time. So that's the only negative about this cycle versus last cycle.
So on the Web3 gaming front on Avalanche, how long have these conversations been in motion then? Has it been a couple of years? And how long do you think it'll take them to deploy given the timeline for traditional games?
So like everything else in the space, what the first generation of games, the thinly veiled DeFi games call it, what they did was show the world that there's some interesting stuff happening. And even since last cycle, that's when these conversations started happening. It was like, okay, why are there so many games and why is this so popular and what's happening? That opened the door for deep conversations from the benefits again. Why is it happening? To let's talk about the technology. Is there a fit? And what can we do to enhance our user experience? So it's come to that point in the cycle.
Right. And on that front, what types of immersive experiences do you think will bring in more users to the Web3 gaming world and then also activate the existing ones on Avalanche?
So the great thing about Avalanche is the architecture as well. I said that before for TradFi, but it's also the same for gaming. Whatever immersive experience you're having in Web 2, whether it's an AR, VR type experience to mobile to first-person shooter, it can be enhanced in a Avalanche subnet, if you will. The functions and features that enhance all of those things can be recreated with more efficiency on a blockchain, especially on Avalanche. So whatever the immersive experience is, the reality is it can be done to the user's benefit and to the publisher's benefit on a blockchain.
Right. What are some of the blockchain technology benefits that provide users or these gaming developers that differ from the traditional gaming sector?
So you got to take that in from two perspectives, from the game player's perspective and call it the creator or the publisher's perspective. From the game player's perspective, the user, the gamer, the way they do it right now is they get very passionate. They go into a platform or a game. Their in-game assets, a shield, a sword, a gun, a house, whatever, it's part of one platform. And if they play at a different game, it's really part of a different platform. And those two things are really not fungible. Reality is game players play many platforms and they don't really feel true ownership of any of them. It's more like you went to one arcade, physical carnival or arcade, and you bought those little tokens. And when you leave that physical site, you kind of have to, like, if you spend $100 on these coins and you have 50 left, when you leave, you kind of have to throw them out. It's not really yours. You don't feel real ownership. And you do it at every single different platform. I think one of the key functionality things here for users is really feeling that they own their assets. So what a lot of experimentation is going on, or the development that's going on with some of these big game developers we just talked about, is that you're going to be having the ability to make this game's assets fungible with this game's assets because of the blockchain's ease in exchanging, issuing, and doing all of that. From the publisher's perspective, the people who create these games, the way the Web 2 world works is if you have a game in XYZ and you own those coins that we talked about, whatever it is, those tokens or whatever you play at a carnival, you have to go to the black market and you take a big discount on some third-party website. And then that third-party website gives you 25% value to the buy-in. He goes back to the carnival and, he gets a little bit of benefit, but he doesn't really get the full benefit. It's a third party that gets the benefit, and the guy giving up is the one that loses in that case. The original creator of the carnival or the game doesn't get any of that. So now they will be able to partake in that, call it gray market, if you will. Another thing that the publishers are super excited about is, and you're seeing a little bit of this in traditional Web 2, like Roblox, where there's, UGC, user generated content. Blockchain, because of composability of the code, allows users, not just to be players, but they can create different rooms, different maps, different game scenarios inside of a game easier on the blockchain because of the composability of the code and the openness of the code. So therefore, their own players can actually create more enhanced versions of the same game.
Right. No, that all makes sense to me. And I feel like the ownership aspect is very big for users. I'm not a huge gamer myself, but I've played, Mario Party, those types of games growing up. And once you, start a new game, you don't get to keep what you had before. And so being able to own these assets and carry it with you through your life cycle as a gamer is definitely significant.
Right. I mean, even go back. It's like you can tell which generation are you. Like you're the one that go into the arcade, but then there are those people who go to the carnival and they're shooting ducks or something. But once they leave, they don't get those coins that they use to pay for the ducks, and they have to hopefully next year the carnival comes back in town to reuse those coins.
Yeah, 100%. In the intro to this section, I talked about GDC. You guys had the stand that said Web3 gaming sucks. Can you kind of tell me about the decision behind that and what was the response?
So I don't know what do you mean by the decision behind that decision to name it that?
Was it?
What do you mean by that?
Was it something to kind of shock people, and be like, oh, why does it suck? Or kind of get them more interested? Why did Ava Labs kind of go that route?
There's an intersection of our community who are gamers, the users, okay, not the developer side. And they fully believe in self-sovereignty. They believe in owning your own assets and really having exchangeability freely. They're the ones that gave us the idea of saying traditional gaming sucks. It's not that it sucks, but it's more like it could be so much better. So right. I don't think it was properly termed. It should have been more like how much better, but that doesn't excite people. And so it wasn't I don't think it was our marketing genius there. It was probably our community's genius.
Love that. On that front, what do you think the community wants more of, let's say in the future for Avalanche gaming? Where do you kind of see growth going here, looking to the next 2 quarters, 12 months, et cetera, and beyond?
They want to see the launch of some of these big games.
Right.
And so do we. So that's all happening. The only thing I can say is working at Ava Labs and our product team, working with their product teams and developing the games. From a Web3 perspective, it's all on track. Anything that's not on track, it's because, again, Web2 game development always gets delayed. It's like making a movie. It's just very hard to make a movie to everyone's perfect liking. But they want to see a big launch, and they're all happening. And I can assure from the Web3 and the involvement of Ava Labs from helping them integrate, that's happening. I can't predict timelines on when, quote unquote, a movie gets finalized through production and through editing and through all that.
Right. Takes time. These things take time.
Takes time.
For sure. Speaking of the future, I want to discuss the outlook for the second half of the year on Avalanche, Ava Labs, what we should expect going forward. What do you think are the biggest areas for focus on Avalanche? And what do you think will be the biggest drivers for success?
There's one umbrella focus. There's a lot of little things and verticals and all that stuff, but there's one big umbrella focus that not only me, I think the community is aware of it because we have great interaction with the community. We are really getting ready for what I call subnet fall. That's not going to be the real name. I don't know what that will be translated into. But basically, right? There's a lot of technology being done right now to basically, I'm going to simplify it so that the non-tech people can even understand. Just think of it as like the ability to have a one-click launch of a self-sovereign blockchain that has 100,000 TPS, and each one of these subnets are interoperable with others. So that vision, that completion, this is what Dr. Eamon Gunseer, the founder, CEO of Ava Labs, has always been talking about, is ready and moving along. And by the end of the summer, early fall, there will be some sort of explosion in that. So that's if I want to leave everyone one thought, get ready for the fall, because the technology behind this and the business development partnerships with players in different verticals are all happening and ready to launch big in the fall.
Yeah, I saw Goon put out a tweet of like a list of upgrades that were coming to Avalanche soon.
Yes.
So super
exciting. One was
exciting.
very technical. I would refer back to them for the technology aspects and what they're exactly called. But for the people who just want to understand it, think of it as like a one-click launch of the self-sovereign, 100,000 TPS interoperable blockchain.
Right. And then as the president of Ava Labs, how are you looking at the ecosystem as a whole and making sure that the momentum that's being built continues to grow? What are the key sectors you want to hone in on for growth?
So, one of the strengths I think about the Avalanche platforms, it can support every type of vertical because it's a platform. It's like an operating system, like Microsoft can support any functionality on top, whether you're a artist or a Wall Street professional. So the Avalanche blockchain can support anything from the crypto native stuff, from call it SocialFi, DeFi, all the way to TradFi, to gaming, to whatever else is on the institutional side. That's the great thing about the platform. What am I looking forward to is we've had a huge effort in the last, call it, couple of quarters in terms of DevRel for the crypto natives. In fact, at Austin Consensus just yesterday, we had Codebase. Think of Codebase as a accelerator where we invited some of the VC friends from Ava Labs to come in and be judges and to give these great, entrepreneurs who are creating applications a chance to compete for grants in order to fulfill their dreams and develop great things on Avalanche. So the outreach and the work with the development community is something that I really look forward to, not just in the last couple of quarters, not just in Consensus yesterday, but also going forward.
Right. Looking at this past quarter and the year so far, how does it compare to previous quarters or even last year? What is working and not working right now?
So, just a couple of things to note, like even total addresses on Avalanche from this year to last year has literally increased by close to 100%. So a lot has continued to work. Daily active users, TVL, as you mentioned earlier, have all continued to grow nicely. I think what's slightly different between last year this time versus now is the types of development that you're seeing in the institutional side. Let's leave the crypto native side off a little bit. And the quality of the names that Ava Labs is talking to on the TradFi and on the brand side of enterprises is really much higher now. We just did something for Anschutz Group, AEG. Everyone will know more about the festival name, Coachella, where AEG owns a whole bunch of festivals. And one of the festivals they have access to is Coachella. And they want to deploy a blockchain-enabled NFT ticketing system to create, call it in-festival engagement and activity, so they can have better understanding of their users and ultimately translate that to the other festivals so they can create a nice community around all of their festivals using a blockchain NFT enabled system on Avalanche. So the types and quality of the brands, the types of Wall Street firms, types of non-Wall Street firms like Sports Illustrated, Coachella, all of these have really increased in the last couple of quarters.
Right. So there's one more follow-up question I have for you on that front is in the terms of these institutional Wall Street-like firms, what do you think will be the big thing that brings them into this space? And then for the non-Wall Street type firms like the Sports Illustrated, et cetera, of the world, normal quote unquote Web2 companies, what do you think would be the driver there?
So you have to break it up by time between where.
Right.
So the Wall Street US people, I think, frankly, are looking for more certainty in the regulatory environment. For the brands, first outside US, the rules are a little clearer, more clear there. They're already deploying things like, we've talked about SK, the loyalty program in Korea, where we're working with them to create a solution where I think, out of the 24 million people in that loyalty pool, it's only been open for 6-7 months now, maybe a little bit more active live. We're talking about just a little bit under 500,000 are already doing it on a blockchain version of it versus the traditional Web 2 version of it. And their internal data shows more engagement, more usage from their blockchain enabled users. In terms of overseas TradFi type people, ANZ and others that we're talking with, they're actually deploying in, call it, active stuff as opposed to proof of concepts. So you have to break that question up between which region and where.
Right. Okay. And then opening up the floor to the Q&A. So if you have questions, ask them. We've gotten some come in during our conversation. One of them asked recently on Mornings with Maria, John mentioned that Ava Labs works with BlackRock and PayPal. Can he expand on those partnerships?
I never said exactly those. I said we talk to and work with people like BlackRock and PayPal. I'm not going to be able to say more than that, and we'll just leave it at there.
Okay, got it. The next question was, when are we going to see the use of tokenization with big Wall Street players on Avalanche?
Well, they're already doing it. KKR was live, but some of these illiquid assets take time for the demand side. What I call the demand side is people creating the market. So there's, again, a big difference to reference this question back to your earlier question between this cycle and last cycle. Obviously, last cycle, they want education. This cycle, they're actually developing and building the products. But last cycle, there was fewer quality assets tokenized. This cycle, there's actually quality assets being tokenized. So the supply side is there. We now need the social awareness, the education to get the demand side ready and going.
Got it. Okay. And then I brought up gaming from the last question. Someone else also asked, why is Avalanche encouraging games to launch on their own chains versus Avalanche becoming a publisher themselves?
Ava Labs has never been in the business of creating apps or dApps to compete with the people who are developing and want to bring their stuff over. Ava Labs and Avalanche, their technology. Ava Labs are the people, their technology, service, software providers. We want to be the underlying layer. It's more like, we don't believe in closed ecosystems like Apple has. They own iOS and they dictate who comes in and out on the app system. The thought is, hey, we'll help create infrastructure necessary, code base and other events to help developers come in. We want it to be open so any developer can come in.
Got it. And the last question we have time for, John, is Codebase happened yesterday at Consensus or at AVAX Startup House at Codebase, right? I think I'm getting that correct. Which projects from Codebase's first cohort are you excited about? What problems are they solving? What crypto subsectors are they focused on? Tell us everything that you know.
Like it. Okay, so I was getting live updates real time. I can tell holistically first, one thing, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of interest. The room looked really cool. I saw pictures of it. It was just generally considered a big success. Now, in terms of what types of verticals, they ranged everywhere from people doing real world asset stuff to social five and traditional crypto native stuff. I think we should let the people who are there, who may do the next quarterly with you, answer specifically what they were more excited about because they saw it firsthand. I'm just getting feedback from in a secondhand way.
No, totally fair. And I think we'll do a follow-up one with them as well and cover it on our end. But yeah, those were all the questions we had, John. Is there anything else that you would like to add or note that we didn't discuss that you think is important?
No, I mean, thank you to our community. It's great. Please keep staying involved. Always feel free to reach out to me. You know how to get me on Twitter. And obviously, thank you, Jackie, for doing this.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you to everyone who listened in. And thank you, John, for your insightful comments. We're looking forward to talking again next quarter.
Take care.